At exactly 3:12 a.m. on a chilly Thursday morning in Asheville, North Carolina, a trembling voice came through the 911 line. "My mom won't wake up, and there's a weird smell coming from the basement." The dispatcher asked the boy's name. "Tyler. I'm 10. The operator froze. Something in his voice, too calm, too practiced, sent chills down her spine. It wasn't panic. It was fear layered in something else. "Tyler, is someone else in the house?" A pause. I think so. I heard footsteps, but I locked myself in Mom's room." That's when every emergency protocol snapped into motion. Within 5 minutes, 2 patrol cars and an ambulance were on their way. The home sat on a dead-end road, nestled among dense trees that blocked out the streetlights. A classic 2-story with cracked shutters, rust-stained gutters, and a mailbox leaning like it wanted to fall over. The officers approached cautiously. They knocked. No answer. Then came a faint sound from inside, a whimper. They kicked in the door. What they found in the living room stopped them cold. A woman lay unconscious on the couch, her arms covered in bruises and her breath shallow. Next to her, a boy sat cross-legged on the floor, hugging a blanket. His eyes were wide, unblinking. EMTs quickly determined the woman, Alyssa Hart, 33 years old, wasn't just passed out. She had been drugged. Fentanyl mixed with alcohol. A fatal dose, if not for the timing of Tyler's call. But Tyler was the real mystery. He showed no signs of trauma, no tears, just a quiet, watchful stillness. Officer Rivera gently knelt down beside him. "Tyler, what made you call 911? He stared at the basement door. "She said if I ever heard the sound again, to call." "I heard it." "What sound?" Tyler whispered one word. "Screaming." The officers turned toward the basement door. The stench hit them instantly. Metallic, moldy, wrong. Guns drawn, they descended. The old wooden stairs creaked with each step. And at the bottom, a steel door. Not a normal basement door. This one had a reinforced lock, a keypad, and scratch marks on the inside of the frame. Rivera forced it open. And inside, a room. There. Filthy. Chains on the wall. A stained mattress. A single light bulb. And in the corner, a woman. Alive. Barely. She flinched when the light hit her. Naked from the waist down, her wrists swollen from zip ties, eyes darting like a cornered animal. She had been down there for days, possibly longer. Her name? Jessica Monroe. Age? 28. Missing for over 3 weeks. Reported last seen getting into a rideshare. She was on every local news channel. Her parents had been pleading for information. Now here she was, in a stranger's basement. Or so they thought. Tyler was taken into protective custody. Detectives interviewed him while child psychologists sat nearby. His story. Heartbreaking. "Mom told me never to go down there. She said it was storage. But sometimes, at night, I'd hear crying. She said it was just my imagination. She told me if I said anything, we'd have to move again." The officers looked into it, and what they found next shook them to the core. This wasn't the first time Alyssa Hart had moved. In fact, she had lived in 5 states in 6 years, each time under a slightly different name. Each time, shortly after a woman in the area had gone missing. Alyssa had no criminal record. She worked remotely for a tech company. Quiet, polite. Volunteered at Tyler's school twice a month. Neighbors called her friendly but private. She didn't drink publicly. She didn't party. No strange visitors. But her rental records, social security aliases, and movement pattern revealed a disturbing truth. Alyssa Hart was a master of vanishing, and someone had been helping her cover her tracks. The kind of relocation she'd pulled off, 5 times with no red flags, wasn't something a single mom could do alone. Investigators searched Alyssa's devices. Encrypted messages, anonymous payments, VPNs, a burner phone. One contact stood out. M.E. Just 2 letters. And a message from the day before her collapse. Last one was sloppy. Too loud. Fix it before the next cycle. Detectives realized with horror. Jessica Monroe wasn't the only one. She was just the latest. As social workers cared for Tyler, he started to talk more. He drew pictures. Strange ones. One was a stick figure of him and his mom, and a third person in the basement. Another showed his mom giving something to a man in a hoodie outside the house. "Is that your dad?" they asked. Tyler shook his head. "That's Mr. Ellis. He helps Mom." When shown a lineup of known aliases, Tyler pointed to a photo. It was a man named Marcus Ellis, a former cybercrime consultant who disappeared off the grid 4 years earlier after being questioned in connection with a missing woman in Vermont. Suddenly, it all connected. Alyssa Hart and Marcus Ellis were not lovers. They were partners in what seemed to be a carefully coordinated operation of abduction, control, and movement of women across state lines. Jessica Monroe had been lured by an ad for a photography shoot. Others, it appeared, were promised jobs, housing, or support groups. All targeted, all trafficked, and all disappeared under the radar. Except this time, Tyler broke the chain. By calling 911, he saved Jessica, and he exposed a horrifying underground network. Alyssa Hart was charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, aggravated assault, child endangerment, conspiracy to traffic persons. Jessica Monroe survived, and her testimony became central to the indictment. But Marcus Ellis? Still missing. Until a week later, when police found a burned-out storage unit 3 towns over. Inside were charred remains, dozens of driver's licenses, and a scorched hard drive. DNA results confirmed 2 other missing women, and a partial match for Ellis. But not complete. He was still out there. Sometimes, the strongest courage comes from the smallest voice. A 10-year-old boy named Tyler didn't just save a stranger. He cracked open a nightmare and forced it into the light. He obeyed his mother out of fear. But when he chose truth over silence, he changed lives. Forever. The lesson: even when you're afraid of the people you love, doing the right thing can save more than just yourself. 2 weeks after Alyssa's arrest, Tyler was placed with a foster family. He was doing better, sleeping more, drawing again, until one morning, the foster mother opened the mailbox and found an envelope. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a single photo. Tyler, taken at recess the day before, and a note. "Tell the boy his story isn't over. I'm not done with him yet. M.E." It arrived silently. No postmark, no name. Just an unmarked white envelope slipped into the mailbox of the Jefferson foster home in a quiet suburb outside Asheville. Inside it, a single photo of Tyler, taken the day before, on the school playground. He was smiling. On the back, a note written in clean block letters. "Tell the boy his story isn't over. I'm not done with him yet. M.E." The foster mother, Karen Jefferson, a retired trauma nurse, went pale. She immediately called Detective Sarah Wilkins, the lead on the Hart case. Wilkins arrived within 20 minutes, escorted by 2 plainclothes officers and a tech unit. "We need to move him," Wilkins said, quietly but firmly. "Whoever this is, they got close enough to take that picture and drop it off in person, which means we're being watched." By the end of the hour, Tyler was being relocated under a new alias, part of a temporary protective custody order. But the question rang in every investigator's mind. Was Marcus Ellis still alive? Or was someone else now pulling the strings? At the new safe house, a cabin tucked into a secure government property deep in the Smoky Mountains, Tyler began remembering more. He started having nightmares. Woke up screaming about a red door, a woman crying, a man in a hoodie whispering, "You'll be next if you talk." When pressed gently by the psychologist on duty, Tyler finally drew a picture. A room, with hooks and mirrors. He brought women there, he said. I wasn't supposed to see, but I did once, when I peeked while hiding in the laundry basket. He said the place smelled like gas and paint thinner. Wilkins circled the team up. That's not just a torture room. That sounds like a clean lab setup. Which meant the kidnappings weren't just about trafficking. Something else was being created or destroyed there. Back in Asheville, tech analysts managed to partially recover files from the scorched hard drive found at the burned storage unit linked to Marcus Ellis. Among them were GPS pings from an old burner phone, a list of email aliases, and most alarmingly, partial video feeds. Footage of different women in different basement rooms, all time-stamped, all silent. One feed matched the room Jessica Monroe had been kept in, but the others, unknown. And several folders were labeled Delta Room, B3, and Harvest Q. What did they mean? This wasn't just a kidnapping ring, Wilkins said. This was a system, an operation, possibly international. Forensics dropped another bombshell. The remains found in the storage unit were not Marcus Ellis. They belonged to a man named Connor Bell, a former private investigator turned off-grid survivalist. He'd been missing for 8 months. But, get this, he was the one who had been hired to track Alyssa Hart. Someone killed him, burned the evidence, and tried to make it look like Marcus Ellis died. Which meant Ellis was alive. And he had just threatened a 10-year-old boy. Digging into Ellis's financial trail, what little of it existed, revealed his deep ties to multiple private security firms. He had trained with former intelligence officers, had knowledge in encryption, misdirection, and even chemical handling. This was a man who could vanish when he wanted. But then a lead emerged. An old associate, Rosa Delgado, a former cyberforensics analyst who had worked with Ellis briefly before he disappeared. When Wilkins visited her in Houston, Rosa hesitated at first. But when she saw the photo of Tyler and read the note, her face turned to ash. He always talked about the project, about making people reset. Said people could be repurposed if you stripped away enough memory, identity, and fear. Reset? Wilkins asked. Yeah, Rosa whispered. He said, one day, they won't even scream anymore. The next morning, Tyler pointed to a photograph while playing with a map puzzle. It was an abandoned church on the outskirts of Rutherfordton, just 90 minutes from Asheville. That's it, he said. That's where I saw the red door. Local records confirmed the property had been purchased under an LLC tied to a shell company. When investigators cross-checked it with the files from the burned hard drive, they found a match. Delta Room. GPS pinged there 2 months ago. They assembled a raid team. Wilkins went with them. At 5:42 a.m., SWAT officers moved on the abandoned church. There was no resistance. Inside were dusty pews, broken hymnals, cracked stained glass. And beneath the altar, a hidden staircase. They descended into what looked like a subterranean bunker. Concrete walls, air filtration system, generators, surveillance equipment, and on the far end, a red door. They opened it. Inside were 3 women, alive, malnourished, chained, silenced with duct tape and fear. One of them, reported missing from Savannah over a year ago. None of them remembered how they got there. They'd been sedated, moved, and made to believe they were being processed for a new life. On the walls were medical records, photos, and disturbing notes. Cycle complete. 97 days. Compliant under code name Gray. Initiate reset. Wilkins stepped back in horror. This wasn't just trafficking. It was experimentation. Behavioral. Psychological. Possibly neurological. Ellis wasn't just a predator. He was running a program. That night, as Tyler slept safely under federal guard, Wilkins reviewed the footage again. Then she saw it. A blurry clip. Marcus Ellis, looking into a camera, saying, "The boy. He's the key." The file was labeled Phase 3 Heart/Bloodline Contingency. Wilkins turned to her assistant. What the hell is the heart/bloodline contingency? The assistant just stared back, pale. You don't think they were grooming him, do you? We spend our lives trying to protect children from the darkness in the world. But sometimes, they shine a light on it first. Tyler wasn't just a witness. He wasn't just a victim. He was the turning point. Because in a world carefully built to hide monsters, his voice broke through. The lesson: even when systems fail and justice sleeps, truth can come from the smallest soul with the loudest heart. 2 nights later, at a secure holding facility where Alyssa Hart was being kept, a fire alarm triggered an evacuation. In the chaos, a guard went missing, and in Alyssa's cell, scrawled across the wall in what appeared to be rusted blood, were 4 chilling words. He's coming for him. The prison guard found it first. Scrawled on the inside of Alyssa Hart's cell, smeared across the cinder block wall in dark, rust-colored streaks. He's coming for him. Beneath the words was a crude, almost childlike drawing of a stick figure, hands bound, eyes crossed out, and 1 word in bold block letters beneath it. Bloodline. Prison security was locked down immediately. Alyssa was sedated and transferred to solitary. But the damage had already been done. Somehow, Marcus Ellis had reached her. And whatever this bloodline contingency was, it had already begun. Back at the federal safe house in the Smoky Mountains, Tyler was withdrawn. He stopped speaking altogether. Psychologists called it trauma freezing. But it was more than that. He was remembering. In dreams. In flashes. In one session, Tyler suddenly whispered, "He used to tell me I was chosen." The therapist leaned in gently. "Who told you that, sweetheart?" "Mr. Ellis." He'd whisper it through the vent. "Said I was the next generation." Said Mom agreed. Agreed to what? Tyler's voice dropped to a whisper. To make me forget who I was. Detective Sarah Wilkins went to confront Alyssa in her solitary cell. The woman looked like a ghost, pale, motionless, almost robotic. Wilkins placed Tyler's most recent drawing on the table. It was a crude sketch of Alyssa standing beside Ellis, while Tyler stood in a cage. "Why did you let him do this to your son?" Wilkins asked. Alyssa's eyes flicked up. "Because he said Tyler would be free." Free from what? Pain, grief, memory, all the things that break us. "You're talking about mind control, Alyssa." "No," she said flatly. "I'm talking about cleansing." Agents finally cracked the last of the burned drive data. Buried in encrypted folders were a set of documents labeled HB9, Early Conditioning Phase. They contained psychological profiles of Tyler dating back to age 3, schedules of dosed food, sleep interruptions, memory blackouts, files logged as dream seeding protocols. One entry read, "Subject shows increased docility when exposed to maternal conflict plus programmed auditory phrases. Long-term goal, compliant identity reset by age 12. Wilkins read the words and nearly vomited. They weren't raising a child. They were engineering a future weapon. A report from the FBI behavioral team revealed something even more chilling. Marcus Ellis had once written a paper, an unpublished theory on inherited trauma reprogramming, arguing that certain children from emotionally fractured environments could be rebuilt into higher functioning personas devoid of empathy or resistance. He had tried to publish it anonymously under the alias M.E. Harper. The surname? Not coincidental. He'd met Alyssa years before she ever became a mother. She wasn't his victim. She was his accomplice. And Tyler? He wasn't just a boy. He was their experiment. 3 days later, a federal line rang in Wilkins' office. "No caller ID. Voice disguised. You're wasting time. The boy's already changed. You're just too blind to see it." Wilkins leaned in. "Who is this?" "You already know. But it's not about me anymore. It's about what he'll become. Tyler's safe. You'll never get near him again. You think it's about proximity? It's always been in his blood. Alyssa gave him the gift. I gave him the plan. Where are you? Silence. Then the voice said, "You'll find the next subject where the first scream was ignored." Analysts scrambled to interpret the call. Where the first scream was ignored. It had to be a reference to the first known victim connected to Ellis and Alyssa, Jessica Monroe. Her screams were documented. But what about the ones they never found? A new search was launched. Old missing persons files were re-reviewed. And then they found her. Amber Louise Taylor. Disappeared 7 years ago from rural Tennessee. Age, 21. Newly pregnant. Vanished walking home from a part-time job at a diner. Her case was closed due to lack of evidence. Labeled a runaway. But her address? An abandoned farmhouse in Cross Hollow. Wilkins led the raid team. They approached the decaying farmhouse at dusk. There was no electricity, no movement, just acres of silence and a barn leaning on its last legs. In the cellar beneath the kitchen floorboards, they found it. Another bunker. Inside, a bed, chains, journals, and a mural painted on the wall in faded red letters. Generation cleansed. Bloodline ready. Next, Tyler. But that wasn't all. In the corner, they found a sealed cold storage container. Inside it, a collection of vials, blood samples, labeled with dates and names. One label read, Tyler Hart. Cycle 1 complete. Evil doesn't always wear a monster's face. Sometimes, it wears a mother's smile. It hides behind lullabies, bedtime routines, packed lunches, and sometimes the ones we expect to love us most sell us out for a belief in something far more terrifying. Tyler was born into a lie, raised inside a program, but his soul still fought its way to a phone and dialed for help. The lesson: you are not your past. You are not your bloodline. You are what you choose when no one's looking. That same night, Tyler woke up screaming. He clawed at the sheets, sobbing uncontrollably. When agents rushed in, he pointed to the window. He was here. He was standing right there. A search revealed fresh boot prints in the snow, and a hand-drawn sigil carved into the wood of the window frame. A sigil that matched the mark found in the bunker. And on the back of Tyler's neck, a fresh tattoo. He hadn't left the safe house. No one had entered, but someone had still marked him. No ink, no needle marks. Just a sigil, a complex, swirling symbol no more than an inch wide, burned just below Tyler's hairline. The skin around it was red, but not fresh, not swollen, almost like it had been there for days. But that was impossible. Federal agents had eyes on Tyler 24/7. There had been no breach, no sedation, no chance for anyone to get close enough. Unless it was planted before the safe house. Before Tyler ever called 911. Before he even knew he was in danger. They marked him like livestock, Wilkins said through gritted teeth. They planned this since the day he was born. A specialist from Quantico's psychological warfare unit flew in to examine the symbol. She recognized it instantly. It's called a bind mark, used in old underground psychological cult programs, meant to suggest preordained identity. Like branding? Wilkins asked. No. Worse. It's a psychological trigger. A way to tell the subject, you belong to something greater, even if you don't remember why. So, you're saying Marcus Ellis conditioned him? No. I'm saying he bred him. From the recovered cold storage samples at the farmhouse, one final document was decrypted. A genetic dossier. Not just of Tyler, but of multiple children. Cross-referenced with missing person reports, it became clear. Tyler wasn't the only one. There were 12 others, each born to young women between 2011 to 2016, who vanished shortly after giving birth. None of the children had been recovered. The project title? Rebirth Initiative, Phase 1, Children of Cleansing. And all were said to be in development. Tyler was the first to escape, but the others, still hidden. One final DNA test revealed what Wilkins feared most. Marcus Ellis was Tyler's biological father. It explained everything. The obsession, the experiments, the meticulous planning. Alyssa Hart had been a willing surrogate, then a handler. Not out of love, but loyalty to Marcus and the vision. Tyler wasn't just their child. He was the cornerstone of something far bigger. Tyler stopped speaking again. The drawing stopped. He became still, quiet, until one day, while watching clouds roll by from his window at the safe house, he finally spoke. He said I was his beginning. Wilkins sat with him. And what do you believe? Tyler looked at her. His eyes no longer wide and terrified, but focused, sharp. I think he's afraid now, because I don't belong to him. I'm not his beginning. I'm his end. With the 12 names from the Rebirth Initiative identified, the FBI launched Operation Clean Line, a nationwide manhunt to recover the remaining children and dismantle the last of the underground facilities. Over the next 45 days, 8 children were found, hidden under new names, some already showing signs of deep conditioning. 3 women believed to be their mothers were rescued from secured compounds. 2 agents were injured during a raid on a facility disguised as a private Christian rehabilitation center. But Marcus Ellis remained missing until a hunter in the Appalachian foothills discovered a body inside a narrow cave, half buried under collapsed rocks. A notebook was tucked under the corpse's arm. Its cover, cycle broken. The body was too decomposed for visual ID, but dental records confirmed it. Marcus Ellis, shot in the back of the head. Execution style. No weapon nearby. No signs of struggle. Just a note, scribbled in childlike handwriting. You said I'd forget. I remembered everything. The writing matched Tyler's early schoolwork. The safe house became Tyler's home for 6 months. He received therapy, private education, and monitored support. He began speaking again, sleeping again, drawing again, this time pictures of hope, of birds in flight, of open doors with sunlight pouring through. He asked Wilkins once, "Do you think I'm like him?" She looked him in the eyes. "No. You're the reason he's gone. But I'm part of him. You're not what you come from. You're what you do with it." Tyler nodded and quietly returned to his drawing. That day, he drew a house, with no locks on the doors. Life lesson. Evil can plant seeds. In minds. In families. In bloodlines. It can dress itself up in genius, in visions, in promises of purity and progress. But in the end, it can't survive the light. And sometimes, the light doesn't come from guns or badges, but from the courage of a 10-year-old boy who was never supposed to remember. Who remembered anyway, and chose truth. The lesson: we are not defined by who creates us, but by who we become when we finally break free. Tyler was placed with a loving adoptive family in Oregon under a new identity. He now goes by a new name. He no longer draws cages or monsters. He plays the piano. He writes stories. And every year, on the same day he made that 911 call, he writes a single sentence in a private journal Evelyn Hart once left behind. I was supposed to be his beginning, but I chose to be his end.